Frank Toby Jones started in 1922 in a rented house in a residential Tacoma neighborhood on D Street with 22 rooms. Today, Frank Toby Jones is home to 220 seniors living on a stunning 20-acre campus near Point Defiance Park. Here's the story of Frank Toby Jones Senior Living, founded on faith, hope, and service. By the early 20th century, newly empowered with the right to vote, wealthy and middle-class American women organized themselves to improve society, and Tacoma was no exception. In September 1921, at the suggestion of Mrs. Virginia Mason, president of PEO Chapter C, steps were taken by 15 women of Chapter C to establish a home for the elderly.
We are here to establish a home for old people, for those in the evening of life who are on the eastern slope, waiting till the shadows a little longer grow. For men and women who have reached the limitations that have been made in the world's work and are alone and lacking in adequate means to maintain a home. These we want to provide for and ensure for them a safe and comfortable home until their passing on.
On February 15, 1922, these women incorporated the Tacoma Old People's Home. Bylaws were written, and the residence was christened Rest Home. From the Tacoma community, they elected men and women who were interested in the good cause to serve on a board of directors. Mrs. Virginia Mason, the woman with the vision and leading spirit of this movement, was unanimously elected board president.
After a few months of planning and growing courage, we grew bold enough to lease the 22-room Danaher residence at 424 North D Street for 3 years and prepared to open our doors for a home of rest to those who are ongoing and waiting. We started with only the necessary funds from our chapter to pay the costs of incorporating, stationery, and the basics. Then, as is always the case when a good work is begun, a friend came from this direction and another from that, the circle growing wider and wider, for it became quite apparent that Rest Home had touched a popular chord, and thus the furnishing of our house grew day by day in every way better and better, and our faith grew bigger and stronger, some even visualizing a beautiful home built on spacious grounds to come at the termination of our 3 years lease.
Mrs. Miller, president of the Circles Cabinet, conceived the idea of forming rest home circles, each with the membership of 20 women, all working towards one goal, a big annual bazaar to raise funds for Rest Home.
Circles from all over Tacoma joined in the effort to raise funds and furnish the Rest Home. Women solicited funds from local merchants. They sewed, baked, and ran bazaars for the Rest Home. Some circles made children's clothing, which was sold, and others specialized in needlework of all kinds, even mending.
Wealthy friends and family members were encouraged to make donations to Rest Home. The women raided their own homes for furnishings and fittings for the new facility. They scrubbed, cleaned, hung curtains, and carried furniture. This home was founded on their faith, hope, and personal service.
It is a joy to think and tell of the service and time given by these busy sisters and by all who later came into the work. Men and women of big business affairs who were always present at our many meetings and willing to serve on committees. Our merchants were liberal, our community was generous, and from its four corners, many valuable and useful gifts came. So now we have a comfortable and beautiful home filled with a satisfied and happy family.
The first person to be admitted to the new home was Emma Anna Eaton, a retired school teacher of 40 years at Franklin and Bryant Elementary Schools in Tacoma. She brought with her not only her cat, but also a cage full of canaries. The rest home was immediately successful, and the funds raised by the circles were a lifesaver. The faith, hope, and service of all involved kept the home above water financially. The Old People's Home caught the attention of a neighbor, Mrs. Frank Toby Jones, who established an endowment fund as needed income for the home.
I've always had a soft spot in my heart for the welfare of elderly people who have arrived at that period in life where their very existence has become almost a nightmare, wondering in their loneliness whether their little pile of savings during their 50 or 60 years of active life would provide them with the necessary 2 or 3 meals a day for the rest of their allotted time. That was the reason that I decided on this memorial home. It seems to me that the site is especially desirable for such a place. There will be flowers and vegetable gardens for the women who will make their home here.
However, this fund and the donations from the circles and others, in addition to the sums charged residents, didn't cover all the expenses. Still more financial aid was needed. It became clear that a rental home would not be large enough to be satisfactory in the long run. A new permanent location would be needed by the time the lease of the Danaher residence expired. The successful operation of the first home under the management of Mrs. Ada Gibson was a necessary stimulant to persuade Mrs. Jones to provide further funds for a new home. On July 5, 1923, a dinner and celebration was hosted at the Tacoma Hotel. It was an occasion for rest home progress reports and a farewell for Mrs. Jones, the honored guest, who was leaving for Europe in an extended tour of the battlefields of Flanders and France of World War I.
With the Rest Home Treasures Report complete, we have a surprise announcement. Our honored guest is presenting us with 58 lots near Point Defiance Park and $150,000 toward the building of a home on this elegant site. It is to be called the Frank Toby Jones Home and will be a permanent home for the elderly where they can be free of concern over their future and enjoy the companionship of people of like age.
Born on May 22, 1845, Frank was a teacher prior to marriage and lived in Jay, New York with her parents and younger sister. Charles Jones was a young, reasonably successful owner of a small mill in Michigan. Frank Toby wed Charles Jones in Jay, New York on her 27th birthday in 1872. He had always dreamed of greater opportunity and adventure in the West, and in 1889 the Joneses arrived in Tacoma, which, by Eastern standards, was a little better than a hinterland in the Wild West. Charles Jones was a visionary. He joined forces with 3 other men to establish the St. Paul and Tacoma Lumber Company, pioneering the use of the bandsaw in place of the conventionally used circular saw, which saved enormous waste in the cutting of logs, thus maximizing the profits of the company.
Throughout the developmental stage of the mill, Charles tried to shield me from worry over the contentious choices that he was making. I would have none of his protection. I have an active interest in every stage of the plan and construction, and even turned up on the mill floor uninvited to cheer the first testing of the much maligned bandsaw.
Soon a second St. Paul and Tacoma mill was commissioned, and in no time it became the world's greatest lumber producer. The St. Paul and Tacoma Lumber Company was a big part of Tacoma, self-christened the City of Destiny, which was in full bloom. Though a sharp recession swept the United States in 1893, St. Paul and Tacoma Lumber Company survived. Finally, the discovery of gold in the Yukon in 1897 put an end to the recession, and the St. Paul and Tacoma Lumber Company took advantage of the renewed boom that accompanied the flow of prospectors to Alaska, and prosperity reigned again. In 1908, Charles purchased, without co-owners, the Northwestern Lumber Company mill in Hoquiam, Washington. When the United States joined the World War in 1917, the St. Paul and Tacoma Lumber Company found itself in the shipbuilding business, a major supplier of railroad ties and materials for boxcars, and a major lumber supplier for the budding aircraft industry. On November 28, 1922, at the age of 77, Charles Jones died following a stroke. The couple never had any children. Frank kept her quarter share in the St. Paul and Tacoma Lumber Company and retained full ownership of the mill in Hoquiam. Though she was 78, she proceeded to manage the mill after her husband's death. She was also in a position to indulge her own generous heart. During the times of severe recession, Frank had seen the suffering of those less fortunate than herself, prompting the Joneses to be generous contributors to various charitable institutions in Tacoma. Prior to Charles' death, he had pledged $25,000 to the building of a new campus on what is now the University of Puget Sound. On the morning of the groundbreaking ceremony 2 years later, Frank promptly offered $200,000 instead. Today, Charles Jones Hall stands as the administration building of the UPS campus. Next, Frank turned her attention to the needs of the elderly of Tacoma. In the 1920s, neither Social Security nor Medicare were even dreamed of. In a time when senility could mean incarceration, the aged, who lacked families with the will or the means to care for them, could live in neglect and die alone.
During all of the years of changing fortunes in my life, I have learned what it was like to live in fear and want. I'm aware of how lucky I am to have security for my own old age. I want to share my good fortune with others and am determined to establish a home in which the elderly can live in comfort and dignity, whatever their means.
Less than a year later, an 80-year-old Frank, on March 14, 1924, manning a wheelbarrow and spade, presided over the groundbreaking of the new home. And on July 16, 1924, Mrs. Jones laid the cornerstone of the Toby Jones building on a spectacular 5-acre site with views of Commencement Bay and Mount Rainier. Only 7 months later, on March 4, 1925, the home opened, a beautiful Tudor-style building with private accommodations for up to 65 residents. In addition to gracious rooms and a dining room, it had a stage where entertainment would be provided, a library, and at the heart of the communal living area, a picturesque solarium.
Every detail of the home has significance to me, but my greatest joy is in the solarium. Being able to give such an abiding place to men and women whose sunset has such a setting. Sunlight streaming through the windows, casting interesting shadows on the landscaped pool and fountain, make this room an ideal place for restful hours.
The move to the new home brought both eager anticipation and fear of change. There was an old sea captain who had been on the waiting list for the rest home for so long that he reckoned he should have priority at the new facility.
Arriving before any of the others, and indeed before any of the board members who were to form the welcoming committee, I inspected the home by myself and installed my belongings in the room of my choice. That done, I sat on the front steps to wait for everyone else to arrive.
History doesn't tell us whether he was allowed to remain in the room or not. Additionally, a number of rest home residents, having become fond of the old Danaher house, refused to leave it and staged a sit-in. They had to be forcibly removed to the new Frank Toby Jones home. Luckily, when they arrived, they found their new quarters to be more than satisfactory, so called off the protest. The Frank Toby Jones home was originally run as a trust and Frank generously donated to the endowment fund run by a board of trustees with Mrs. Virginia Mason as president. Frank intended the home to be a haven for the elderly of modest means, so at first glance it seems surprising that she stipulated new residents had to pay an admission fee of $1,000 and donate half of their assets and half of their future income to the endowment fund, which supported the home.
The elderly, if they are paying nothing, would feel like recipients of charity. They would find it demeaning. Paying the admission fee will cause them to develop a sense of commitment. The donation of their assets and the pledge of half their income, no matter how small, will increase both their sense of commitment and their sense of self-worth. A second benefit of this stipulation is that it will prevent the wealthy from applying for admission, unless they are willing to make what would be a substantial donation to the home.
In 1930, though Frank wasn't seeking recognition, she was honored by the Tacoma Chamber of Commerce in a ceremony in which they described her as having rendered distinguished service in the community and set an example of citizenship which, if followed by others, would make Tacoma a better city. She had realized her dream, and although she never lived at Frank Toby Jones' home herself, she left a legacy which her memory had lived down through the years. Frank passed away in her own home on April 27, 1931. Today she rests next to her husband within the Tacoma Mausoleum. 60 residents, including 3 married couples, occupied the home in the early years. Each single person had a private room with a bathroom shared between 2 residents. Each married couple had an apartment with their own bathroom. Many brought their own furnishings. For others, furnishings were provided by the home. It was soon recognized as one of the most outstanding facilities in the nation. The PEO circles that worked to raise funds for the original rest home were renamed the Frank Toby Jones Circles, and they continued raising funds to further furnish the home and to increase the endowment fund. At the height of their activity, there were 29 circles, each averaging 15 members, working passionately to provide for the home. Over a 20-year time span, the circles contributed approximately $60,000 to the expenses of the home.
On behalf of the Executive Committee and the entire board, I would like to acknowledge receipt over the past 6 years of nearly $30,000 from the Frank Toby Jones Circles. It is needless for your chairman to refer at any length to the benefits resulting from the work of these wonderful women workers, for we must all realize how futile any effort to maintaining our present standard of cheerful living in this institution would be without their past and continued support.
During the Great Depression and World War II, the home struggled. The endowment fund preserved the quality of life, but the beautiful lawns turned to hay and the flower gardens turned into vegetable gardens to help feed the residents.
Ever since the invasion of Poland and England's declaration of war on Germany, the women of home, including myself, have been sewing, knitting, and bandage rolling. We've knitted 341 sweaters, 91 large and small caps, 252 pairs of men's socks, plus scarves, helmets, afghans, quilts for baby cribs, and so much more, all for the service of the Red Cross, the British American Relief, the Russian Relief, and other organizations.
Prosperity returned after the war, and the endowment fund began to grow, and the circles dwindled. At the home's 25th anniversary, only 5 circles remained in operation. After the war, the home was filled to capacity, with another 75 elderly people on a list anxiously awaiting the day when they too would be admitted. The wait list was so long, the home stopped taking applications. Fortunately for the Frank Toby Jones home, the philanthropic examples of Mrs. Jones were followed again and again. Mrs. Lillian Pratt of Fredericksburg, Virginia, was a former Tacoma resident who became interested in the home through one of its residents. Mrs. Pratt made annual donations to the home for 10 years while her friend Jessie Barlow resided there. Then, in 1948, out of the blue, Mrs. Pratt made a bequest of $750,000 to the home in memory of her mother, Susan Elton Thomas. These funds were sorely needed and allowed the home to acquire adjoining land, which brought the extent of the grounds to 40 acres.
The entire executive committee is convinced of the need for another home of the same size as this home, as there are more than enough applications to fill such a building at present.
Another board member voiced the opinion that an infirmary also be built, which would solve the crowded conditions, present and future. A committee of 5 were authorized to see an architect for ideas about long-range planning and a main layout. After visiting other retirement communities in Washington State, Mr. Neal felt strongly that the building of an infirmary should be held until it was certain that there was enough money to run a second building in the same style as the present one.
To do this, we would need an excess income of $300,000. If we could get 5 or 6 people to give $25,000 and others for less than that amount, plus the entrance fees of 65 new members, might be what's needed. I move that we defer any question on the infirmary for the present and proceed immediately to see if we can raise the money to put in the building.
With this board direction, the home moved forward. More funds were desperately needed for the expansion and to build an infirmary. Mrs. Pratt's bequest was specifically to be used for a 50-year income trust for the operations of the home. The directors were in a dilemma. Then, in 1962, a large gift from the Tensler Foundation gave the directors hope. The Tensler Foundation was established in the will of well-known philanthropist Flora Bell Tensler, with husband Herman Tensler, owner of the Northwest Door Company in Tacoma, as the president of the foundation. The Tensler gift would provide 1/3 of the funds necessary to build a new building. A plea for help brought many smaller donations, and soon the funds for the new building were in hand. The $1.2 million that the new structure would cost had been raised entirely through private funds. On May 22, 1962, a groundbreaking ceremony took place at which Miss Margaret Long, secretary of the FTJ board for 36 years, wielded the same spade that had been used by Mrs. Frank Toby Jones at the original groundbreaking ceremony 38 years earlier. And Otto Strauch, who had provided the horse and plow for the original groundbreaking, was standing by with his plow. Waiting in the wings, though, to do the actual digging was a Caterpillar tractor. Pratt Tensler Hall opened on January 5, 1964, with Herman Tensler, husband of Flora Tensler, there to present a symbolic key to the board president, Frank Neal, and Miss Long. Frank Neal had served in running the organization from 1927 to 1960. The new building was built in the same Tudor style as the original building and was built to the same exemplary standard as the original building. It provided accommodations for 70 apartments, each with a private room and bath, and 23 dedicated infirmary beds. The hall had its own kitchen, dining room, communal living areas, and a modern infirmary.
We are gathered here today to pay tribute to one of the historic moments of the city of Tacoma, the dedication of the Pratt Tensler Hall as a part of the Toby Jones home. The genius of America is that the common man does the uncommon thing, and today we are met to pay homage and tribute to those people who have made Pratt Tensler Home possible, especially the very fine gifts from Mrs. Pratt and Mrs. Tensler. When a home like this is established, it not only touches the lives of those who come to it in its beginning, but year after year, generation after generation, and decade after decade, in the name and memory of those who make such wonderful things possible in the community.
In a nationwide study of retirement homes conducted by Equity Research Associates of New York in 1968, the home was rated among the top 3 in the nation. In later years, the Tinsler family asked that its name be removed from all its many projects in the Tacoma area, so Tinsler Pratt Hall became the Lillian Pratt Hall. Early in the 1980s, it became clear that the present financial model was not providing enough money to cover operating expenses. No longer was it feasible to guarantee all personal and medical care for the rest of a resident's life in exchange for half of his or her income and assets. By 1984, the entrance fee had been replaced by a one-time $500 deposit and the requirement for new residents to provide half their assets and half their income was waived. Instead, residents began paying a monthly fee. The financial crisis also forced the board of directors to sell the acreage that is now Solstice. In 1982, a complete renovation of the Toby Jones building took place, which converted the existing rooms into 33 new apartments designed for independent living, each with a living area, separate bedroom, private bathroom, and the option of a built-in kitchen. Also added was a jacuzzi, exercise equipment, showers, craft room, and a beauty shop. Also in 1982, the infirmary was transformed from a sick bay for minor illnesses and accidents to a 24-hour healthcare center, including a dining room and common areas. Caring for more long-term needs was the focus, with the emphasis changing to creating health rather than just managing illness. Restorative and PT programs, a social worker, and mental and emotional support were also added. When the remodeling was complete, the home, including both buildings, would accommodate 120 residents plus 23 patients in the healthcare center. Another dimension was added to the campus in 1992 with the construction of 8 duplexes, 16 living units, each with a full garage, 2 large bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a well-appointed living room, full kitchen, washer, and dryer. Because of their overwhelming success, over time another 4 duplexes would be added. Duplex residents live completely independent lives, yet receive the safety and warm community that the Frank Toby Jones campus provides. In 1998, the city of Tacoma asked Frank Toby Jones to take over the operation of the Point Defiance Ruston Senior Center. Both Frank Toby Jones and the Senior Center share common goals in providing a broad range of services to meet the health, educational, social, and recreational needs of seniors of the community. Under excellent leadership of the Senior Center director, it continues to flourish and has served thousands of seniors annually with hundreds of classes, programs, and a lunch program. In 2003, Frank Toby Jones broke ground on the largest scale building project in its history, including a 6,000 square foot wellness fitness center and the Garden Apartments, a 29-unit apartment building. There was also renovation and expansion of the healthcare center, including a new memory care community called Our Place. Residents moved into the new healthcare center in 2004, which had more open space and more private rooms, with a total of 43 skilled nursing beds. It also provided for 15 memory care residents in a large home-like area with the breathtaking views of Commencement Bay. In 2004, residents also moved into the new Garden Apartments, which are perfect for active seniors interested in reducing the responsibilities of home maintenance, wanting to be a vital part of a vibrant, continuing care retirement community, and looking to meet new friends from all walks of life.
I moved to the Garden Apartments when I was 74, and you have no idea the security, peace, and relaxation I felt from my very first day here. It's just an incredible place to be independent, yet with security and answers to questions as you're aging. Every effort is made to keep you independent as long as possible. If you need more care, it's available right here, and the transition is gentle, tactful, and handled with so much grace. Families are supported by the Frank Toby Jones staff so beautifully. My kids never have to worry about me. It gives my whole family and me the best peace of mind that I could possibly imagine. Living in the Garden Apartments is incredible.
Frank Toby Jones has also become a leader in senior wellness in Pierce County. It was one of the first senior living communities in the area with a comprehensive program developed by a nationally recognized wellness consultant. On April 16, 2004, the brand new M.J. Wicks Family Wellness Center opened in honor of the Wicks family for their generous support of $1 million to build the new wellness center.
Marge and I moved to Frank Toby Jones in 1997, and our family always been passionate about health. I enjoy exercising regularly, and after moving here, thought it would be a wonderful addition to this beautiful campus to have a state-of-the-art wellness center that both residents and the greater Tacoma community would enjoy.
The Wellness Center has become an essential gathering place of the campus and includes a large indoor walking track, numerous daily fitness classes, many state-of-the-art fitness machines, and personal trainers, all intended to help improve the quality of life of seniors. In 2007, Frank Toby Jones embarked on a cultural and educational renaissance with the start of the Frank Toby Jones Senior University. Senior University provides a wealth of programs for lifelong learning for people age 55 and better, for both campus residents and in the surrounding community. Seniors have the opportunity to build skills, explore new subjects, and enjoy the learning process with others. Lecturers and instructors are experts in their fields, hailing from local colleges and universities, businesses, not-for-profits, and cultural organizations, along with others who have retired with rich career experiences. Most classes are offered free of charge as a public service to the Tacoma-Pierce County community. In 2011, Frank Toby Jones rebranded and further embraced its passion to provide a meaningful life to all seniors that we touch with a new team member promise, which is to make every day meaningful for my residents, my team members, and myself. FTJ residents are the very reason team members stay so long at Frank Toby Jones. Many team members have worked at Frank Toby Jones for 10 years, and some even 20 and 30 years, with one team member serving over 40 years.
What our team member promise means to me is this. It is what I strive for every day. I honestly appreciate and admire the people that live and work here. I marvel at the lives they have lived and continue to live right here on our campus. How we interact with one another will either make or break a part of that person's day. I choose to make their day and strive to make it meaningful, hopefully with a little bit of laughter.
In 2017, ground was broken for a new state-of-the-art care center, including skilled nursing and memory care. A major capital campaign commenced to raise funds for this home-like care center, where residents receiving the most care could live in dignity and style. FTJ resident, Dr. Phil Phibbs, former president of the University of Puget Sound, was the capital campaign chairperson and provided inspiration to the look and feel of the new care center. Lead gifts from the Gary E. Milgard Foundations and the Ben B. Cheney Foundations, along with the support from residents, FTJ team members, and community members, ensured this innovative building came to fruition. The care center provides nearly all private suites with private bathrooms, personal in-room medication cabinets, beautiful gathering areas for residents and family members to share time together, lovely dining rooms, large activity rooms, and a theater. At the same time, ground was broken for Bristolview, a new luxury 16-unit independent living apartment building. All apartments are 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, some with magnificent views of Puget Sound and Mount Rainier, and each provide an open living plan, a full gourmet kitchen, fireplace, high-end finishes, secure underground parking, housekeeping, and all the conveniences and security of living in a well-planned community. In 2018, Lillian Pratt Assisted Living received a much-needed refresh to stay competitive in the market. New carpet, paint, light fixtures, apartment doors, and furniture brought the building up to current standards, to the delight of everyone. The grand opening for both the new care center and Bristolview was held July 25, 2019, and was attended by over 200 people who were excited to see these incredibly beautiful buildings. Dr. Phibbs helped cut the grand opening ribbon, and then tours began. Residents moved into Bristolview Apartments in August 2019 and into the care center in November 2019.
The care center is everything we wanted it to be. Since its opening, I've looked at every nook and cranny in this building, and it's phenomenal. Because there are secure outside courtyards for memory care residents, they have the freedom to walk outside. It makes it a real place, not like a prison where you are locked up. There is the entire scope of life that residents can enjoy. They can see lots of flowers, hear the birds, breathe and feel the fresh air. The memory care rooms are like little houses where you have everything you need. This makes such a big difference. Residents can bring their own special artwork, bed and bedding, couch and chairs, just like home. There is access to wonderful activities, and the food is good. All these things help make the FTJ Care Center special and unique. It's innovative and far ahead of its time.
In 2022 and 2023, Frank Toby Jones introduced several new innovative programs. The interactive holistic wellness program addresses the body as a whole, which is the key to longevity and maintaining independence as one ages. Cultural cuisine, art expression, acrylic pours, forest bathing are just a few of the many exciting programs and classes. Montessori-inspired programming for memory care residents was also introduced in 2023. While Montessori is most associated to learning with children, Montessori for dementia has been shown to be extremely effective in allowing the person with dementia to reconnect to a world in which they are losing access. Furthermore, in 2023, the End-of-Life Doula program started, which provides companionship, comfort, and guidance to those residents facing a terminal illness or death. In 2023, due to the incredible success of the Point Defiance Rest and Senior Center, once again the City of Tacoma approached Frank Toby Jones to take over the operations of both the Beacon and Lighthouse Senior Centers in Tacoma. In a mutual agreement, Frank Toby Jones started operating these 2 senior centers with great success. This provides Frank Toby Jones the ability to live out our mission and serve even more seniors in the greater Tacoma area. We are honored and proud to announce that in 2024, the Centennial year, Newsweek magazine for the first time ranked continuing care retirement communities across the U.S., and Frank Toby Jones placed number 94 in the U.S. and number 3 in Washington State. And just like a century ago, when a group of forward-thinking and compassionate women raised funds to improve society and the lives of seniors, today the spirit of philanthropy proudly endures at Frank Toby Jones. The circle continues to grow wider and the mission to enrich and extend the quality of life for seniors in our community is sustained by meaningful gifts contributed from the South Sound community, foundations, FTJ residents, and our team members. Both on and off the Frank Toby Jones campus, these gifts enhance the comfort and care, the physical and spiritual well-being of seniors, and days filled with purpose and opportunities. In this 100th year, to honor the legacy and vision of Mrs. Frank Toby Jones, the Centennial Circle was formed to uplift the Charitable Subsidy Fund. These funds will help provide financial assistance and peace of mind, ensuring residents who have outlived their resources through no fault of their own will always have a home at FTJ, just as Mrs. Frank Toby Jones originally intended. We are incredibly proud to commemorate this significant milestone in our history. As we look ahead to the next 100 years, Frank Toby Jones remains steadfast in our commitment to provide compassionate, high-quality care that enriches the lives of seniors and their families. Through strategic planning, we are currently developing a campus master plan that will guide us forward and continue to keep Frank Toby Jones as the premier continuing care retirement in the Northwest and the nation.
I thought when we stood on that beautiful spot overlooking the Sound, and with the glories of the sunset all about us, that here the tired old people whose work was nearly finished would find rest and joy. And it looked with all that beauty upon them as if it would only be a step to the better country. Then I thought that Jones Hall at the college would take the young folks just when they were starting out for their life's work and get them ready to serve, train them, educate them, inspire them, and help them to make the right kind of men and women. Then I would have a place for them at the end, when their work was done, just to rest a while in the glory of the sunset.